Today's edition of Mac Voices is supported by MacVoices Magazine, our free Flipboard magazine that brings you some of the best Mac, iPhone, and iPad productivity tips on the web. High in signal, low in noise, just like Mac Voices, MacVoices Magazine includes information on how you can get more out of your Apple technology. Subscribe at macvoices.com/magazine or search for Mac Voices Magazine on Flipboard. Welcome to Mac Voices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, as you probably know, I got to spend some time in San Jose at WWDC and AltConf, and one of the people I got to see there was Yaroslav Stepanenko of MacPaw and Setapp, and now he's back to talk about a project that they have been doing that you probably remember from last year. Yaroslav, it's great to see you now. It was great to see you in San Jose.
Thanks for having me on. My pleasure.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. We talked about trying to do this live, but you weren't quite ready to do that. But you did present some of the results of, and I want to make sure I get it right this time, the annual Mac Market Survey 2017. You presented some of those results at AltConf in San Jose.
Yeah, that is correct. That is correct. I had a session at AltConf during WWDC. And we presented the key insights, like the major highlights that we had during that session.
Now, so there are a lot of interesting things here. You were on the show last year when you did the 2016 version of it, and that was such a success that you decided to expand it and add some new things and take it a little deeper?
Yeah, absolutely. So last year we did this Mac developer survey to better understand the Mac community, right? And that was really successful thing because we gained lots of insights, lots of information in terms of how do you succeed as a Mac developer? Should you sell on the Mac App Store? Should you prefer distributing your application outside of it, or preferring both? Like all this stuff related to the Mac developers. And it, like I said, it was a pretty successful thing. We get lots of positive feedback from the Mac community for doing that and for sharing the results. So the choice was obvious to do it once again this year.
So there's so many things here that, and I think last year we did it, actually we pretty much went through the whole survey. This year, I think we'll refer people to the site and let them look at the survey. But let's talk about some of the I guess the biggest surprises. And I'll let you be the one to judge what a surprise is, because obviously you're a developer. And you did the survey last year. So along with the new categories, what insights came out of this year's survey?
So basically, to be consistent, what we did, we asked exactly the same questions to exactly the same audience, kind of to see what's changed in 1 year time frame. And this is where we saw some of the interesting insights. And what we also did, we added a huge section of questions regarding the subscription. So it's a pretty hot topic in the market nowadays. Lots of people are doing that. So it kind of happened within outside of the Mac community, like Microsoft, Adobe, and all these companies followed that route already. So now we can see that it's happening on the Mac space, and we decided to ask some questions. So lots of surprises, lots of unexpected things for me and for my team were identified in that space. And coming back to what we did, the questions that we asked in a very same manner compared to the last year, I cannot see like there are a bunch of different surprises, but some numbers showed really surprising things. Like, for instance, we all know how much effort Apple put to improving the app review process, right? And I would expect huge improvements there. We saw some improvements, but things like app review process still tops the list on why developers decide to distribute their applications outside of the Mac App Store. We also saw that this year the revenue proportion is even less in the Mac App Store compared to outside of it, which kind of leads us to make the statement that it's the Mac App Store brings less money, right? So things like that.
Okay, so let's back up for just a second. On the revenue part, so am I hearing you say that it's less important this year to developers, or it's a bigger reason for them not to pursue the Mac App Store?
You mean the app review?
Well, the app review and the revenue both.
Yeah. So the app review is still tops the list as a reason why they decide to sail alone. So it's one of the reasons they decide to escape the Mac App Store as a distribution channel. And for portion, what I was saying, that Mac App Store brings less money. So they make more revenue outside of the Mac App Store.
Right.
Which means either they found the way to do business better, to run the business better outside of it, or it is what it is. It just brings less revenue, right?
Yeah, and it seems unlikely that it brings less revenue from the standpoint of having customers, because the store just gets bigger. They sell more iDevices, so it would point, at least, in my guess, would be that the developers who decide and are successful in going outside the App Store maybe are doing a better job of promoting their services and their apps, or at least publicizing them.
Exactly. So just figuring out and how to do the business outside of it. Because one of the great things that Mac App Store can give you is customers, but it's not that easy to reach out to those within like all the thousands and thousands of applications available on the Mac App Store. So if you're doing both, an obvious marketing thing to do is to learn how to be visible, not just on the Mac App Store, right?
So I definitely want to touch on, well, before we leave that, on Mac Voices we try to talk about all the angles. I mean, this is the developer angle we're talking about here. From the customer angle, obviously the Mac App Store does offer a number of benefits. There is some security in buying apps from the Mac App Store, because you feel like at least they've gone through a vetting process by Apple. Now, it's become pretty clear in the last few weeks that that process is not perfect by any means, but it's one more process. And there's the ease of purchase, the ease of installation, the ease of reinstallation when you get a new device. So there are a lot of reasons on the consumer side to do it. But then on the consumer side also, if you are a reasonably sophisticated consumer, sometimes the apps you want are not in that store because of the sandboxing issues and the fact that Apple, in its attempts to protect the consumer, is also limiting what the consumer can do.
Yeah, that is true. But you know what? I think that, this is something developers know, right? And if they want to get the customer outside of the Mac App Store, this is one of the things that they have to do right? They want to be considered as not as a spamware or whatever, right? So the positioning, the messaging, the definition of the value proposition that you're bringing to the user should be good enough so that you are not considered as a non-secure piece of software. So, for instance, like Clean My Mac, right? It has never been on the Mac App Store during the Mac App Store sandboxing and restrictions. And we have never had any significant issues being considered as a not decent piece of software, right? Let's call it this way. Sometimes we have some issues because we are compared to a competition who's not doing it in the right way. But that always happens. But overall, the picture is pretty satisfying for us.
The one advantage you have is that MacPaw, and by association then Setapp and DevMate, you have that reputation in the community. I mean, you've already established that, and it's not easy. I mean, listen, if I see a new app come out, I'm learning more and more. I want to see who the developer is. And if it's somebody I haven't heard of, I may hesitate. I may not download. Even though it gets a great review somewhere or somebody touts it as fantastic, I may have just that little bit of hesitancy. But if it's on the Mac App Store, I may be a lot less hesitant to give it a shot. So, it really is tough to evaluate, I think, from the developer side, trying to figure out what the best way to approach it is, and from the consumer side, how much risk do you want to take? So.
Oh yeah, that's true. But we kind of decided to take the risk and build the brand, right? It takes years. Like, we've been for 9 years on this market now, and I think we do have a reputable position.
Well, you do, because you've made yourself visible at events, and not just Macworld and WWDC and AltConf, but you've made yourself visible in a lot of different ways, in a lot of different places, and that definitely promotes it. I guess it comes down to that transparency thing, where this is who you are, and I feel like you're a real person. You're not somebody hiding behind an app or hiding behind a website, and that makes a huge difference when it comes to confidence in buying from you.
Oh yeah. Thanks for saying that. And you know what? This helped a lot for the survey project, because when we were doing it first time last year, one of the main concerns that I had, people would not take time to share their experience with us. I mean, developers, right? And we had 640 something, if I remember correctly, the number. And I was like, oh wow, that's a lot. So, and this year again, we have more than 700 respondents, and this is a pretty good number to make sure that the data makes sense, that it's statistically significant, and we can talk about it now.
Yeah. Let's go back to subscriptions, because this was something, as you say, it's a hot topic, and it was new to this year's survey. What conclusions did you draw from the results?
So basically, the first thing that we wanted to know was, so the topic is hot. Everyone's doing that, right? It's on every piece of news every morning, like subscription. This company switched to subscription. That company switched to subscription. And that was the trend was huge, and that was one of the reasons why we introduced Setapp to the market. And we wanted to know how many people actually tried subscription. And you know what? When I was analyzing the results, I thought like 90, 95 or something like ridiculously huge. And I was really, really surprised that it was only 20%. And I showed this number to the team, and the guy from the product development team told me, like, listen, giving all the challenges and all the difficulties that developers have to do to make sure that the product fits the subscription model, that is a lot. That is still a really, really huge number. So and that was kind of a point of discussion here, because like I said, given all the news and all the subscription buzz around us, I was expecting like way, way, way bigger number, but it's 20%. For me, it doesn't sound like a lot, but the feedback from the tech team and from the business development team, they say like, wow, this is like, given all the challenges and all the difficulties that they have, and like all the steps you have to do to make sure that the roadmap of the product fits the subscription, that's a lot. So that was kind of interesting.
That's something I don't think a lot of us appreciate, that developers have changes that they make, or they have to make to make a subscription model viable. We just think, oh, okay, now you want me to throw money at you every month, with the promise of features that really aren't there yet. And I know we've talked to Greg Scown of Smile about this, and that. Yeah, there's a little bit of an act of faith, and this is where I think that the companies that have the reputation have a bit of an edge over someone that doesn't, because and I'll use Smile as the example, they have a history of releasing products, releasing new features, and at a steady rate. Somebody else, and Adobe. I mean, again, to be fair, Adobe has been rolling out a lot of updates and a lot of things if you subscribe to their service. It's expensive, but you are getting something for it. I think there's some people out there that look at subscription services and they don't appreciate that fact.
Yeah, that is true, and this comes to the point. So what we also asked was, what were the main challenges of switching to subscription model? And this question was asked to those 20% who did try it before. And I'm looking it up, and I can see that 72% said explaining the value to users. Thinking like it's a vast majority of people say that they have a challenge to make sure a user gets it, right? To make sure that monthly or annually, wherever the model is, the check will be signed, right? So, and that's kind of comes down to what you are saying. So, and the second challenge was 52% said that defining the right pricing is a challenge. And I kind of understand these guys because we had this conversations a lot here when we introduced the Setapp. That was like a very, very hard discussion, not a weekly, not even a monthly. So we did like lots of analytical stuff to define the right pricing, and we decided to start with the $10 and $9.99 for all the applications available, and now it sounds like that was the right decision. So, because the adoption rate, the conversion from trials to paid users it's actually exceeded our expectations so far.
That's great to hear. That's great to hear, because I think it is an interesting model. My version of it has been that there are some apps of text expander. If you use it, Microsoft Office 365, Adobe, if you are in the graphics world and you need that stuff, absolutely. But those are things you use every hour, every day, very consistently. The apps that I might use once a month, maybe once every couple months, that's a little bit of a problem, because to try to pay a subscription model for that, I mean, I almost wonder if there's a model in between where I could buy, let's just say I could buy a week of license for an app. And now I recognize completely that is really going to be difficult for the developer. So I know that's not realistic, but it's really hard for me to say, okay, I want to pay $3, a month, or $30 a year annually for something that maybe I'm going to use once or twice a year. And so yet when I need it, I need it, and when I want it, I want it. And so up till now, the thing has been, well, I'm going to pay the developer, and I'm going to pay him the upgrade fee, and I may not pay it to him right when he releases it. I may just do the upgrade the next time I really need it.
Oh yeah. And you're absolutely right, and that's the whole point of Setapp as a distribution channel for developers, because for them it's tough. Like all the things you're mentioning, this is like their concerns of why they cannot go to subscription, right? Because pricing and justifying the value and making sure they use your app enough times monthly to keep paying the subscription. Like we kind of trying to solve all these problems for developers. And basically the meeting room that I'm in right now, on its wall it says one of the reasons why for Setapp, it says great products should be rewarded, right? So, and people have great products and they deserve to get the recurring revenue, and they deserve to be rewarded. That's why we're kind of building the partnership with industry leading developers and helping them delivering the products to the end users.
Yeah. I will refer to the viewers back to the interview we did. We did a Mac jury with a couple jurors and your CEO about Setapp and how the pricing model works and how it does reward developers. We won't get into that here because that's what that discussion was, and we asked some tough questions. And he gave us some really good answers, and I came away super impressed with how much thought had been given to this. So, folks, if you haven't checked out Setapp, it's a great way to do it. Yaroslav, I remember long ago, not that long ago, but there was discussion of micropayments that we would all be paying for things sort of on an as-used basis, and you'd be measuring those payments more in pennies instead of dollars or $10. And that never seemed to catch on. And I often thought that would have been a really good way to do it, because it would reward the apps that got used all the time. And yes, there might be another class of apps that didn't make sense for, but for some things, that would have been perfect. And that feels to me a little bit like what Setapp has done.
Yeah, kind of. It's close because every time someone is using application within Setapp, developer makes money. So it's per usage basis. It's something similar. I think that is how Spotify shares the revenue. They pay the artist if someone listens to. So if you listen to, let's say, Red Hot Chili Peppers, they got certain portion of revenue from your monthly check. So this is kind of the closed model to how Setapp operates. Yeah. Right.
So let's go back to the survey. We got off.
Yeah.
This is always a fascinating discussion to me, because we all need to get paid for what we do. And speaking of getting paid, how are developers reacting to the valuations that seem to be placed on software at this point? It seems like software values are depressed. People don't appreciate what it takes to write great software, and therefore they're hesitant to spend on a piece of software what they might happily spend on a cup of coffee.
You mean for the Setapp?
No. I'm talking about now, just in general, the developers' reactions. Was that addressed in the survey?
I don't think we had that question.
Okay.
What we were asking regarding the it's not exactly what you are saying, but the topic is close. We asked whether 30% revenue share is worth all the perks that Mac App Store is giving to the users. And the situation remains pretty much the same year over year. It's slightly different this year, but anyways, almost 70% say no. So last year it was 62, and this year it's 69. So almost 70% do not think it's. I mean, it's obvious that no one wants to share the hard-earned revenue, right? But at the end of the day, there are some perks available, and still like 2/3 do not think it's worth sharing 30% of revenue.
I have to wonder what the cost of deploying an app and working out the payment systems and doing the accounting and doing all those things, they aren't equivalent to 30%, you don't think?
You know what? We made a calculation last year how much it may cost to develop an application. I don't remember the specific numbers, but this is a lot. And that is why we decided to launch such product as DevMate, and which has recently been merged with the payment system Paddle. But I think it's not just about the money. I think it's about the output that you are getting, right? Because there are some limitations. So when people, like for instance, Mac App Store does not have the free trial functionality, and this is a huge frustration for many developers. And it's still one of the reasons why they decide to sail alone. Like for instance, we asked them what are the reasons that developers decide to leave. And it's, like I said, app review process was on the top of the list, 30% revenue share, obviously. But number 3 reason is no free trial available. And for us, it's a big deal, for instance, because we always want to let the user try the product first before they buy it, right? To make sure that it kind of serves the needs and it does what they expect it to do, and so on and so forth. So, and the free trial is an obvious choice. You can make a time-limited free trial, you can make feature-limited trial, whatever, right? But just give an opportunity to try it free. And Mac App Store does not have such a thing. And I think like not having something influences people's thoughts on what is offered as well.
I can't disagree, because again, as a consumer, it always, you can write anything up about an app and make it sound really great, but until I actually get to drive it, I'm not so sure. And I don't much care what the price is. I'm going to be hesitant to pay it if I think that there's any kind of significant chance that it might not suit me.
Yep, sure.
What else? What haven't we touched on in the survey? What other topics were there, or what else was of interest this year?
So yeah, there were a couple of things like, for instance, we asked developers, how do you live outside of the Mac App Store? Like, how do you distribute their applications? And what we saw that this year, developers spend less time kind of reinventing the wheel, right? Because last year, like the vast majority of people, not the vast, but majority of developers tend to develop their systems by themselves, right? And that's kind of an obvious choice because developers want to develop. And as a side note, I can give you an example. The company I worked before, so we had an important thing to do. We wanted to implement the CRM system because we really needed it. And we came to the point when Excel spreadsheets and all this stuff is not enough. And we want to have a CRM system in place. And the guy who was the CTO at that company, said, we can develop it. Just give me the specification, give me the requirements. We can develop it overnight, over a week or something like that. I was like, wait, hold on a second. That's not how things work. Like someone did that for you, right? And trust me, like the market is there. And the fact that there are hundreds of CRM systems can make you think that it might be easier to get one, to buy, let's say, a couple of $100 a month or a year or what have you, and get a decent product already. And this kind of shift is happening for the Mac developers. So they spend less time and more people prefer to get something available out of the box other than developing it themselves. And you know what? Another surprising thing for subscription question, and when I'm saying surprising, it means surprising because we asked the question, how likely, would you recommend the subscription model? And we asked that question separately to those who tried and succeeded, to those who tried and failed, and to those who did not try it at all. So that was the logic of the survey. If they say tried and they say they are satisfied, we ask them, would you recommend, right? And then people who say tried but the results are not good as expected, again, we ask them whether they would recommend or would not recommend the subscription model. And again, this question was asked to those who never stepped the foot to subscription grounds, right? And it was pretty obvious to see that, 80% of those who tried subscription and are happy said they would definitely recommend, and 17% are not sure yet, which is kind of an obvious thing. They're still waiting for the result. That's how we can explain it, right? And only 3% said no. But this is just a super minor number. And within those audience who tried it and kind of stayed with the old way, stayed outside of the subscription, 60% are not sure yet. So people are still thinking, and which kind of makes you think, well, this might be a good model. This is something people are working with, right? And 20% said yes. But there is one thing that made me export the results of the survey a couple of times to make sure I'm seeing the results right. Seriously. And I was calling my colleagues like, listen, are you seeing what I'm seeing? So the thing was that people who never tried the subscription, 50% of this audience would definitely recommend it as a model to go with. And 31% are not sure yet. So what we can see is that half of people think it's a good idea, and a quarter of people, 31%, considering this as an opportunity, right? And only 19% do not think that this is a good idea. And that tells a lot. Like, this is the exact way the developers should be distributing the software, right? And if done right, if the challenge of explaining the value to a user is not a challenge, if the job is done right, this is the exact way the end users expect the software to be delivered to them. And that was like pretty shocking to see that, wow, these guys didn't even try it, and half of them say, yeah, and 30% say, yeah, that might make sense. So that was, because I thought if they didn't try it, that would mean no, right? So that was pretty surprising.
Yeah, and that's especially interesting in light of what we talked about earlier, the fact that they are struggling with explaining the benefits to the customer, and also trying to jump through the hoops of making their software subscription model compatible. So they're anxious. They love the idea, but they're still working through the nuts and bolts of it.
Yeah, exactly. And that was another surprising thing. Remember I mentioned the challenges that they have in switching to subscription model, and 70-something% say that this is justifying the value and then finding the right pricing. Half of people say that they are pretty happy with the current model, or they are complaining about not having enough resources. And here is the statement that I would like to make to developers. So I am a member of 40-something people marketing team, and pretty much every morning on the morning stand-up, someone says we don't have enough resources. But think of it, like 40 people, right? You can do whatever you want. You can launch new products. You can like change the market. You can do a lot of things, right? But someone still thinks that we don't have enough resources. And I bet if we go to a company with hundreds of people on the marketing team, they would be saying the same, right? So what I'm saying is it's not about like having and not having resources. It's about seeing the opportunity and chasing it. Because it's all about like following the market. And if there is an opportunity, you just have to do it, and you have to do it right. It's not about having resources. It's about like being focused on something. Like for instance, we know lots of success stories in the Mac space where a couple of people team make ridiculously great product. Like we met these guys from Airmail at WWDC.
Yes.
I was shocked. You know why? This is like 2-people team. Like 2 guys from Italy made the world-class email client, right? And they won the Apple Design Award. And I don't think they're complaining about not having resources. Like with 2 people, that wouldn't make sense at all.
It's just, I guess it's just like any other business. You know, you look at things, you look at the big mega companies and all the assets, and Apple's right in their pitching, and sometimes they just miss the mark. And then you look at the little garage style companies or something, somebody's running out of their basement and they're putting out just something that is amazing quality, and you think, why? How did the big guys miss this? And why did this one or 2-man team figure it out and execute it so perfectly? Yeah, true. True. That is true. Well, so there's a lot of meat here to the survey, although in saying that, I think it's the good news is that it's not going to take you hours to dig through. You can scan through this pretty quick and get an idea of where some of the trends are. But if you want to spend a little extra time and start comparing results, you can get some deep insights as well. Where do we send folks to see this? So it's available on Setapp domain. So it's setapp.com/Mac Market Survey 2017. And the way we designed it, it has the data for this year, and there is a way to compare it to last year as well. So great. It's pretty easy to use, pretty easy to navigate, I think. I mean, we try to do a good job in terms of design. Well, I will make sure I have a link in the show notes. And of course, folks, you just saw the lower third. So go check it out. If you have interest, if you're a developer, great. If you have interest in the development community, great. But you know what? If you're a consumer, go and look at this too, because this is going to affect how you see software being marketed to you, how you are going to want to buy software, and how you need to support the developers who are providing this stuff. Because if you don't support them, we're not going to get the next crop of great apps. And we all want that next crop of great apps.
Yep.
Yaroslav, please come back again and talk to us. Obviously, this is now becoming an annual thing. So if you do the survey next year, you're welcome back. But I hope it won't be that long before you come back and talk to us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
It's always a pleasure. Good to see you. Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is Mac Voices. I hope this gives you a little insight. It seems like the last few weeks we've been kind of developer heavy, but I think it's such an important thing, again, whether you're a consumer or a developer, to understand what's going on in that part of the Apple market, because at the end of the day, it does affect you. Until the next time, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes, links to subscribe, and to connect with Chuck on Twitter, Google+, Facebook, YouTube, Vimeo, SoundCloud, the MacVoices blog, the MacVoices Dispatch, our weekly newsletter, and on MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard that helps you do more with your Apple tech. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com, bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.